Hezbollah fighters take aim and attack Israeli positions. This is happening on a daily basis. The IDF is responding by striking back at the militant group. And in the middle, UN peacekeepers. They're still out on patrol, monitoring the situation, but they're worried about where the violence is heading.
It is a very concerning moment. It is a very concerning moment, a very tense moment. But we are still on the ground. Our troops have not left. But we need to be very careful because this exchange of fire is going on a daily basis all along the blue line.
And Arab countries are warning the chance of a wider regional conflict is becoming more real by the day. The atmosphere across the Middle East is febrile.
The longer the bombing of Gaza goes on, it seems the greater the anger is on the streets. This protest is organised by Hezbollah, and here its supporters are calling for greater, more direct action against Israel.
The Israeli military says it doesn't want to see any escalation on its northern border, but its troops are ready if the attacks continue. Already tens of thousands have been displaced from the communities here. And in Lebanon, people are also moving to safety. These families are from villages in the south. They're fearful another war is coming.
Well, we're here actually because we left our homes because of security issues at the borders of the country, because of the bombing and all the war that is going on. We are conditioned to this pattern, but we pray that it never expands.
So far, the fighting's been contained to the border areas, but with no obvious end to this crisis, it won't take much to spark a wider war. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Southern Lebanon.
We're told over the last few days that the Israel-Gaza conflict has accelerated the threat of terrorism in Britain. To that end, there's a Cobra meeting this morning. How worried should we be?
Well, I think the government is always protective of the country and always mindful of any threats to terrorism. Of course, it's a very difficult situation at the moment. We'll find out more, presumably, after the Cobra meeting.
Should we be worried?
I think that's up to the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary to announce.
OK. Also hearing that there are thought to be 200 British nationals in Gaza who are being prevented, we're told, from leaving by Hamas, even if they could find themselves at the border. Do you know any more about that?
Well, I've seen the reports overnight about this. I know that the Prime Minister has been working day and night. He travelled to the Middle East very recently to try and secure peace, but also an aid as well, but also to resolve some of the very difficult issues facing British citizens. I'm sure that we'll have more details as they come through. But I think it illustrates a wider point. The nature of the Hamas movement is a terrorist network. They carried the biggest atrocity against Israelis, against Jews since the Holocaust. They have their terrorist network. They've got 300 kilometres of tunnels underneath Gaza. We don't know where the 200 hostages are being kept, from all over the world, not just from Israel. And that is why it's right to support Israel and it's right to self-defence and to take out the Hamas terror networks.
I'll come on to that, but if I could just take you back to the 200 British citizens, including, as we know, the First Minister of Scotland's in-laws still there. Given that they're not being allowed to leave, can we consider them as hostages?
Well, I think that, as I say, I think it shows exactly what Hamas are about.
Are they considered as hostages, as far as the British government was concerned?
If people are being kept in a place against their will and not allowed to travel out, then that is a form of hostage-taking.
Okay.
But, as I say, it shows the nature of Hamas, it shows what Israel has to deal with, and explains why the government has said that it supports Israel's right to defend itself.
Why did the UK at the UN General Assembly not vote in favour of a ceasefire, an effective ceasefire? Why did the government abstain?
Well, as I understand it, they wanted the motion to ensure that it had condemnation of of Hamas, but the government have been absolutely clear that a ceasefire at this time is not the answer. We've called for a humanitarian pause. A ceasefire would allow Hamas to regroup. It doesn't necessarily mean release of the hostages. There's no guarantee that Hamas would keep ceasefires. They haven't kept ceasefires in the past. But that is different from having a humanitarian pause to allow aid to get through, and 30 trucks have got through in recent days. And of course, we need as much aid to go and support the Palestinian people who are suffering because of Hamas. But we need to support them and make sure the aid gets to them and isn't taken away by Hamas.
What's the British government's view on the situation in Gaza at the moment? A breach of humanitarian laws? The British government's view is that Israel has the right to defend itself. It should do everything possible accordance to international law. But any country faced with a terrorist attack, faced with what happened on October the 7th, as I say, the biggest ever attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust. We always say never again, yet it's happened again. A pogrom, as the Prime Minister described us in the House of Commons. Israel has every right to do everything possible to take out Hamas. It's not easy. Within international law, though?
Of course, as far as possible within international law, absolutely. But it's not always easy, because if you are firing missiles from a school or firing missiles from hospitals, you have launch pads. Don't forget, thousands and thousands of missiles are being fired onto Israel.
So accidental breaches
well.
of international law are acceptable?
What I was saying is, tragically, you weep for any innocent loss of life. Israel is doing everything possible in accordance with international law to minimise that loss of life. Dropping leaflets, warning Palestinians, trying to get them to move to the south so they can get to the places where Hamas are and the tunnels underneath Gaza.
I understand that, but targeting hospitals is a breach of international law.
Well, in fact, only last week Israel was accused of bombing a hospital, and it was proved not to be the case, as the Prime Minister set out in the House of Commons. So Israel's not targeting...
Didn't actually say that. He said it's highly likely. He said it was likely that it wasn't the case, and investigations are continuing, is what he said.
Well, I think it's actually very clear. The Americans and the British have said it was not Israel.
I'm actually talking about a different hospital over the weekend, as you know,
yes.
Minister.
So there are no easy answers to this, because what do you do? What do you do if you have missile launchers put on top of hospitals, or you have Hamas in the basement?
Don't target the hospital, surely.
What do you do if they're using those missiles to fire thousands of missiles
do you target that hospital, even when patients are still inside?
I'm just saying to you that these are very, very difficult questions. I would never target a hospital, of course not. But what I'm just setting out to you the very difficult conundrums that Israel has to face in trying to defeat a terror network, which you've just highlighted. It looks like that they are not allowing foreign citizens to leave Gaza, even from the Egyptian side of the border.
Another couple of questions, if I may. The Metropolitan Police has called for sharper laws in dealing with extremism in marches here in the UK. We had Sir Mark Rowley on Trevor's programme yesterday. Thoughts on that?
Well, I think that I've been shocked by some of the scenes that have gone on. I'm from a Jewish background myself. I have family who live in Jerusalem. And some of the chanting of jihad and from the river to the sea is anti-Semitic, as the Home Secretary has pointed out. I do believe, and the government believes, that the police have the laws available. There's the Public Order Acts that have been passed. There's the Anti-Terrorism Acts. There is racial harassment acts. So there are plenty of laws for the police to deal with this. It's good that some extremists have been arrested. I have no problem with people demonstrating peacefully, but much of it is intimidatory, and it's an uncomfortable place for Jewish people in this country at this point in time.